First, the newest IPO stock has 10x'd in just 2 days on $300,000 of sales.
Then Banksy was just unmasked, and he was running a $250 million art business the whole time.
And Tom Brady just got a new job at JPMorgan, recruiting 18-year-olds.
True story, Jack. Let's hit our 3 stories. This is Nick.
This is Jack.
It's Thursday, the new Friday, March 19th, and today's pod is the best one yet. This is a T-Boy.
The top 3 pop business news stories you need to know today.
For our first story, the Nasdaq's newest stock is called Swarmer, a drone brand up 1,100% in 2 days since its IPO.
Because Swarmer is the sole bachelor on an island of hungry bachelorettes.
That's right, we connected drones with reality TV, and we'll get there in a moment. But in the meantime, Yetis, people like to say that a viral stock is going to the moon. Well, this one is going to Mars.
Because an IPO happened this week from the company Swarmer. They priced their stock at $5 per share, but it closed day 1 at $31 per share.
Impressive.
It closed day 2 at $55 per share.
Sit down, stand up, and buzz again. What's going on, Jack?
It's up over 1,100% in 2 days.
It's on pace for the best rookie year for a stock since Ichiro.
Wow. Good baseball knowledge there, Nick.
I do what I can, Jack. I do what I can.
No, we've covered hundreds of IPOs on this podcast.
Maybe thousands.
But Swarmer's IPO is the most unusual one for several different reasons.
That's right. We jumped the T-Boy style to the IPO paperwork and noticed they mentioned the word Ukraine 52 times.
Because the company is only 33 months old.
That's it.
It was founded for the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, and interestingly, Ukraine is their one and only proof of concept for the business.
The website's testimonial is from Ukraine's Minister of Defense because they use their software.
You know, Anthropic has reservations about fully autonomous drones used in warfare. Well, Swarmer, they don't.
Swarmer says that one pilot can control dozens or hundreds of drones to attack the enemy using their drone software.
They swarm. Sounds brutal? Well, their chairman happens to be the founder of Blackwater, the for-profit private military force you may remember from the Iraq War.
And his software will help the military swarm the enemy with an overwhelming force of drones that cannot be shot down.
Now, Swarmer mentions they're an Austin-based company, but we should point out 44 of their 49 full-time employees are fighting the war right now over in Kyiv for independent Ukraine.
Yeah, Swarmer's helping the good guys, and I really hope it stays that way.
But Jack, let's sprinkle on a little bit more context here, if you please.
In recent years, we've seen wars in Ukraine, Gaza, Iran, and more. There's a huge market for military drones that has emerged.
We've covered tank stocks, fighter jet stocks. The military industry is having its best year since Alexander the Great invaded Egypt.
But the price that this stock is trading at is absolutely insane.
I mean, the math ain't math, and the numbers are like noodling us here. What are we seeing, man?
Swarmer claims that they have $30 million of revenue in the pipeline, but their actual sales were just $300,000 last year.
Okay, Swarmer's profit, negative $5 million. How is that possible exactly, Jack?
That means that they spent $16 last year for each $1 they made of sales.
And yet, this company, based on its $55 stock price, is now worth $700 million. That's a big difference.
Nick, this podcast makes more revenue than Swarmer does.
Yeah.
But this podcast is worth $700 million.
Yet, besties, this company, it is so unprofitable that they're required by law to say this in the IPO paperwork. Also something you don't usually see.
They're required to say that they might go bankrupt before the year ends.
And this is what we find fascinating. Despite all of that, none of it is stopping retail investors from pouring moolah into Swarmer's drone stock. So Jack, what's the takeaway for this curious case of a 1,000% up stock known as Swarmer?
If you're the lone bachelor, you're the most popular guy in town.
Oh, we told you we'd bring it back, Yetis. You see, there are very few stock market opportunities to invest in drone companies. Very few.
China's DJI owns 70% of the world's drone market. But DJI is blacklisted in the US.
And the big military defense companies, yeah, they make drones, but drones are just a tiny part of their business.
Only Swarmer and a couple other small companies have publicly traded stocks focused 100% on drones.
So here's what happened. When Swarmer IPO'd this week, the stock market group chats and the subreddits blew up in interest.
And it appears Swarmer rushed to IPO based on their financials to tap into the huge retail investor demand for drone stocks.
Basically, Swarmer's valuation is less about the business. It's more about the limited number of drone stocks on the market.
But when drone competition eventually arrives on the stock market, there's a good chance Swarmer stock falls.
Because, besties, the Bachelor looks less hot once the other bachelors arrive on the island. For our second story, it's Banksy. The mysterious street artist has been unmasked. We now know Banksy's real name.
So let's reflect on Banksy's $250 million business.
But besties, let's start by sprinkling on some context. The inventor of the Bitcoin.
The two Daft Punk helmeted DJ dudes.
Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, all the man.
All secret identities. And so was Banksy.
Yes, the world's most famous anonymous artist.
Banksy once posed as a street vendor in Central Park selling $60 scribbles.
True story.
That were actually worth $6 million now.
Banksy walks into a city without warning and graffitis a random brick on a wall at night, and then that wall is worth $1 million the next day.
Banksy once gave Sotheby's, the fanciest art auction house of all, a painting of a girl with a red balloon to sell for $25 million.
But he'd built a shredding machine into the frame of that painting, so after the auction closed and they sold it, the painting self-destructed.
He shredded the $25 million artwork he sold. I don't think he got paid for it, right?
We're not making this up. Everything we just said is true.
Who builds a shredding machine into a frame? Banksy does.
But breaking news, Yetis. Reuters claims they have proof of Banksy's true identity and his real name, spoiler, not Banksy.
According to Reuters, Banksy was arrested while spray painting public assets in New York City in the year 2000.
And Reuters got a copy of his signature on that court paper. And Jack, what exactly does it say where he signed?
Robin Gunningham, a British man now in his 50s.
That's right, Banksy. He's really Robin Gunningham. Or actually, he was only temporarily Robin Gunningham.
Yeah, he changed his name to the most common British name there is, David Jones, to help protect his identity.
So that's why what was most fascinating to Jack and I is the business of Banksy.
Because Banksy has sold $250 million worth of art while remaining anonymous.
And here was the secret to those sales. Despite his anonymity, Banksy operated a legitimate business. As he called it, the Pest Control Office LLC.
Well, during the pandemic, Pest Control Office LLC made bank.
Americans were splurging on stocks, Bored Apes, and any kind of art. So Banksy sold $171 million in one single year.
His company has sold 9,000 pieces altogether, which includes prints. And the company's job is to verify that it was Banksy who made this art, but do so without revealing Banksy's true identity.
Exactly. The LLC keeps Banksy arm's length from the gallery system to maintain his secrecy.
So Pest Control Office LLC is basically a private market regulator.
That's right. Their value is in controlling the quantity and the veracity of Banksy's art. Basically, like the SEC of Banksy.
But here's the wild plot twist. According to the Wall Street Journal, his real identity being revealed will not hurt the value of his art. In fact, it will help the value of his art.
Yes, we know. We told you that where there's mystery, there's margin. And secrecy is what made Banksy go viral in the first place for over a decade.
But if you're going to spend $25 million on a Banksy piece of graffiti, you want confidence to know he's a real person.
Yeah, you want 100% confidence in knowing it's one person, that he's still alive and that he's actually doing this.
And that he's not like an awful person who's been canceled for some horrible thing he did.
And soon someone will have the chance to buy the first Banksy post-unmasking, which we bet will sell at a record price.
There's a whole new collection of scarcity you can sell now that he's post-unmasking. You think he's going to get a Twitter account?
I mean, Robin Gunningham is definitely available, Jack. So, Jack, what's the takeaway for our buddy Banksy?
At work, you can build your own mythology too.
Yeah, that's right. Jack and I see a career angle here because there's a range of practical career advice from this maverick mystery artist who was unknown for so long.
Lesson number one, it wasn't his skill. It was all about the surprise location that his art was revealed in.
Lesson number two, it wasn't what he drew, but it's the conversations that what he drew started, like that painting that self-destructed live at the fancy auction.
And number three is that not saying anything can be louder than any words you could say.
Besties, those counterintuitive moves built Banksy's personal brand beyond any other modern artist.
So think about where your work is going to appear and what conversation it could start.
And how sometimes saying less lets others talk about you more.
It's not just mystery, it's mythology. And Banksy built a $250 million business on it.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor. For our third and final story, JPMorgan just formed a council of retired athletes to recruit young athletes to get to the bank.
It's profits disguised as philanthropy because you don't acquire customers, you tempt them.
Oh, college athletics. What do we say, Jack? Basically, pro athletics these days, right?
The freshman on Kentucky has a brand deal with KFC.
Not too shabby, which means thousands of 18 to 22-year-olds are already coming into some money early on, and they don't know what to do with it other than spend it on the Sig party.
Which leads to the news. JPMorgan wants a piece of that collegiate NIL money, so they just hired a bunch of superstar athletes to what we're calling Team Jamie?
Team Jamie, America's biggest bank, introduced the Athlete Council yesterday. Dwyane Wade, Tom Brady, Sue Bird, Megan Rapinoe, and a couple other retired all-star studs. The only ones missing were the Toon Stars from Looney Tunes.
Here's what the Athlete Council is going to do. They're going to meet with a bunch of JPMorgan executives to help the bank craft services especially tailored to athletes.
You know, I said Looney Tunes, I meant Space Jam. Sorry about that, Jackson.
From college athletes to pro athletes to their retirement.
Honestly, the only thing missing from the press release was Jamie Dimon wearing shoulder pads under a Xenia suit.
Now, JPMorgan is framing this as something noble. They're trying to save athletes from going broke.
But JPMorgan also hopes that the athletes get rich and that rich people notice the athletes getting rich. More on that on the takeaway.
But Yetis, sports in America is the biggest rags to riches industry there is.
Absolutely, Jack.
A 22-year-old can get crazy rich, crazy quick, going from like poverty to pro big money.
Okay, but what Jack and I find fascinating is that America's sports are also a rags to riches back to rags industry, and the data is compelling.
Get this. 1 out of 6 pro athletes in America end up declaring bankruptcy within 12 years of their retirement.
And why is that, Jack? They all point to the same thing.
65% of athletes in surveys say that they never had a financial education in school. So they get all this money and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, Mike Tyson made $400 million, yet he still went bankrupt, and not because he ate someone's ear.
So JPMorgan is launching an athlete center of excellence and hiring a bunch of ex-athletes to staff it.
Basically going to be the only bank going to campuses, scouting events, combines, offering up free financial education after someone does the 40-yard dash.
Plus, they're going to have a dedicated educational content section of their website with a checklist that athletes should look at before they sign any NIL deal.
So let's say, I don't know, you're a D1 lacrosse face-off guy, Jack. What kind of thing are you going to see these days if you go online?
Okay, the checklist, I scanned the QR code and opened up the checklist. It includes, you should probably think about opening up 5 different types of financial accounts, all of which JPMorgan offers.
Yeah, because you also happen to be considering a Taco Bell deal at this time.
And the checklist finishes with a proposal that you chat with a JPMorgan financial advisor.
Because you're going to need a Sapphire card for that Notre Dame meal plan. So, Jack, what's the takeaway for our buddies over at JPMorgan?
The customer lifetime value of a pro athlete, it is Hall of Fame worthy.
All right, Yetis, you got to think about the numbers here for a sec, because JPMorgan spent a whole bunch of money getting these athletes to agree to that huge press release with a bunch of stars.
Tom Brady's agent doesn't let Tom Brady do anything for free.
Tom Brady charges Mother Earth money for him to breathe.
But we simulated the returns on one successful athletic wealth management client for JPMorgan.
It's bigger than you'd expect. You're going to give this a standing ovation. What do we got on the whiteboard, Jack?
A solid NFL starter might earn $50 million over the course of their career. And if JPMorgan Wealth Management manages just half of that wealth, Nick,
we're talking 1% fee on $25 million. That's $250,000 a year.
And if that wealth grows in the stock market, and JPMorgan remains the wealth manager for a few decades, JPM could make $5 to $10 million in fees on that one pro athlete alone.
Now that's big. But here's what's even bigger that no one's thinking about.
The halo effect.
Totally.
Because you now associate JPMorgan as the bank of face-off guy.
Yeah, one big reason why Goldman hired Justin Tuck of the New York Giants and Morgan Stanley hired Wayne Corbett of the New York Jets isn't just because they're smart dudes. Why is it, Jack?
It's to leverage their stardom to help close deals.
Yeah, these guys attract fans who would rather give money to Goldman, if your favorite football player also happens to work there.
Or also happens to have a bank account there.
So besties, JPMorgan isn't really just marketing to athletes here. They're also marketing to the fans too.
And if this works, the returns will be Hall of Fame worthy.
Jack, can you whip up the takeaways for us for the new Friday?
JPMorgan Chase hired a council of athletes to spearhead their effort to get varsity clients.
Because the ROI of having a pro athlete as a client also includes the fans.
For our second story, Swarmer had the best two-day IPO pop we've ever seen. And we think it's because they're the only drone stock on the market.
See, when other bachelors arrive on shore, this bachelor is going to look a lot less hot.
And our third and final story is Banksy. His identity has been revealed. He's David Jones, born Robin Gunningham.
And his $250 million art business holds lessons on how to build mythology, even at work.
But besties, this pod's not over yet. Here's what else you need to know today.
First, one of the most downloaded apps in America right now is a TSA app. That's right, the TSA app for airports. Oh, and the app, it's not fully working.
For 32 days, there's been a partial government shutdown focused on the Department of Homeland Security.
TSA workers are unfortunately the biggest victim of this. Over 4 weeks, they have been working without pay. Many of them are calling in sick to drive for Uber right now. So if you're at an airport, those guys aren't getting paid.
And the TSA app shows where the longest lines are because lines are really long, but the app doesn't work because of the shutdown.
It's a vicious cycle. And second, Amazon's got big delivery news. 1 hour shipping and no more USPS, man.
New York, LA, and San Francisco already had 1 hour shipping priced at $10 per order for Prime members, but now Des Moines and Nashville and many other smaller cities are getting 1 hour delivery too.
Okay, but the bigger surprise, it's Amazon versus the post office, showdown of the century.
Amazon is reportedly in heated negotiations with the USPS on how much to pay to get their packages delivered. And they're planning to reduce their postal service contract by 2/3 by this fall.
Newman. And finally, the WNBA signed a collective bargaining agreement last night after months of negotiations. Huge step for the league.
For the first time, WNBA players will get a revenue share, which means upside.
Another first, there's going to be the first $1 million WNBA players this season.
The average salary will be $600,000 with a minimum salary of $300,000.
Which is 5 times more than just last year. Now time for the best fact yet. This one sent in by Yeti Susanna Owen from lovely Asheville, North Carolina. And get this, Jack. Susanna started listening to us when she was in 6th grade. She's now in college.
That is incredible.
Thank you, Susanna.
Now she's a nutrition major. And she has another fun fact, a follow-up from our David Bar story.
Yeah, here it is, Yetis. You see, in addition to the different ways of measuring calories in food, our bodies actually don't extract the exact same amount of energy from what each of us eat.
For example, 2 people could eat the same meal, but differences in digestion, gut bacteria, and food prep mean one person might absorb slightly more calories or less than the other person.
So even though calorie labels look super official and precise, the energy we actually get is more individualized. Yetis, you're looking fantastic for the new Friday. If you haven't yet, tell a buddy. HYHTBOY. That's how we grow the show.
Have you had the best one yet? And if you'll be in New York on April 8th, snag some tickets to T-Boy Live right now.
And hey, Disney, if you don't launch Tomorrow's Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow's Amaro.
It tastes fantastic. Trust us.
They should launch tomorrow's Amaro tomorrow.
It's a drink I want to borrow, Jack. If you got more ideas for Disney's first CEO day, drop them in the comments. And Jack and I will see you mañana. And before we go, a happy birthday to Yeti Zidane Thomas down in Frisco, Texas, also starting his part-time MBA over at SMU.
And happy birthday to Giselle Hernandez, turning 26 in Salt Lake City with his serving of some dirty soda.
And Allie Harrington, enjoy that birthday down in Smyrna, Georgia.
Happy birthday to Caroline Corrado in Houston, Texas.
And Lizzie Spence of the Fondue Crew is celebrating a big birthday down in Philadelphia.
Happy birthday to Christina Smilowski, who's getting a massage for that birthday over in Denver.
And Tessie T, we see your birthday over in New York City.
And happy birthday to Debbie Shiadani, a 7-year Yeti, whose belated birthday is happening right now in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
And Millie Driggers from Sparta, Tennessee, had a tonsillectomy. This Yeti is the bravest one yet. Millie, you're on the way to recovery and you're feeling and looking fantastic.
Millie, send us a picture of that big old bowl of ice cream you had.
And a shout out to Jen Migliori, who says that Dick's Sporting Goods House of Cleats opened as she was listening to our story about Dick's Sports opening stores. When does that happen? I mean, oh my God.
I mean, I know our phones are listening to us, but wow.
Yeah, not a conspiracy. And finally, to the Yeti L. Bosch on Spotify, who used our Planuary suggestion. So happy that it saved you a bunch of money on the vacations this year.
And to anyone else celebrating something today, make it a T-Boy.
Celebrate the wins.
This is Jack. I own stock of Amazon and Disney, and Nick and I both own some Bitcoin.